By making a commitment to go for what I really thought was important, I had taken a first step that most people never take. It's amazing to me, even today, to watch people who have so many options. And they are rich in options, and they feel secure in the many options that they have. And they have so many options, they never choose one and get after it. It's one of the downsides of living in a country that's so rich and so free and so wonderful. So I had eliminated my options. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I knew that it was going to take an extraordinary level of commitment to do something that nobody was going to make me do. This was not a job. This was something I was going to have to create out of the air. And so I started studying and figuring and watching and reading on how to raise my level of commitment beyond that which ordinary people considered commitment. Because you know what I had people telling me. This is not normal. This is not a normal thing to do. I thought, I must be on the right track. So I started reading, and I found a story that was 500 years old that literally freed my soul. And is probably a great deal of the reason for whatever success I've had to this point. I found the story of a group of men that left the shores of Cuba on a February day in 1514. There were actually 11 ships involved, 500 soldiers, 100 sailors, and 16 horses. They left from the shores of Cuba, headed to the Yucatan Peninsula, and what they intended to do was to take the world's richest treasure. It had never been done. In fact, this treasure of gold and silver and artifacts and gems, this treasure had been held by the same army for 600 years. Army after army, conqueror after conqueror, had made a stab, had made a try at the treasure, but nobody took it. It was held by the same army for 600 years. And yet, this group of men, led by Hernando Cortez, made it their business to make it their own. Now, this story started like several years before in Spain, where Cortez was already a wealthy man. I'm going to tell you why this affected me so deeply. Cortez was a wealthy man, and he had the idea that he could take the treasure. But he knew that for centuries, literally 6 centuries, people had tried to take the treasure, but the Aztec Empire had held fast to the world's greatest riches. And he looked and he studied and he figured on the mistakes that others had made. And there were a couple that he noticed right off the bat. One mistake that other people made as they were going to conquer is that they made it a side trip. They made it part of everything else they were doing. It was just a stop along the way. There was never a failed mission. There was never a failed voyage in 600 years because nobody ever went there to do that. They just kind of stopped there and tried to take it on the way there. They stopped and tried to take it on the way back. And he said, I can change that because what we're going to do is one thing. We're going to take it. We will do one thing. We will have no other option. I will surround myself with people of commitment. People whose commitment is greater than those around us. He said, I'll construct a team of people. This was another thing that he noticed that in the past had never been done. It was individuals working as a group, looking for individual glory and individual riches. Or it was one individual seeking glory and riches and hiring other people. But he said, if I make other people part of my dream, if I make other people part of what I'm doing, give them a vested interest. Give them a piece of the action. Give them skin in the game. If I put them in there with me, we can have a team of people that can accomplish so much more than one person with a bunch of employees. Now here's the other thing that he found that had been a mistake in the past. He never saw anybody, for 600 years, looking behind him, he never saw anybody who laid in there with everything they had. He never saw anybody who invested themselves totally in that mission. So the first thing he did was to take his entire wealth and finance his own mission. The Queen and King of Spain added money to it, but it took everything Cortez had. He got rid of houses, he got rid of farms, he got rid of land and cattle, and he put it all in the mission to buy 11 ships, to surround himself with people, and to surround themselves with the necessary things to get this mission done. So he was in all the way. He was committed because he had nowhere else to go. And I'm reading this story. I'm like 20 years old, and I'm reading this and thinking, this is me. I have nowhere else to go. And I keep reading the story, and I see that the same thing is happening to Cortez that happened to me 500 years later. The people who were around him started whining. I mean, halfway across the ocean, all the people that were with Cortez started going up to him and saying, Mr. Cortez, you know, this just is not what we thought it was going to be. You know, he had people come up and say, Mr. Cortez, we've prayed about it, and God doesn't want us on this ship at this time. And Cortez was amazed because these were the same people that had prayed about it and told him that God wanted him to be on the ship. And of course, Cortez is thinking, hey, my God doesn't change his mind. And he knew that he had to raise their level of commitment again. He knew he had to lead them. And so when they hit the shores of the Yucatan Peninsula, in the past, they had all gone in and fought immediately. But Cortez took a different tack. He practiced. He literally drilled them on the beach for several weeks. He practiced. I thought, this is what I'm doing. I mean, I'm literally doing comedy in the mirror. I'm 20 years old, and I'm going to be a comedian. I have no audience. I can't get booked anywhere. I'm in my trailer doing my comedy in the mirror. And I don't think Cortez had any mirrors on the beach, but he was drilling me. He was saying, we're Cortezians, and we're here to take your treasure. I mean, whatever he taught them to do, they were doing it over and over and over again. Until the day came they were going to march in. And he gathered them all around him. And he knew that for 600 years, every army that tried to take this treasure had been beaten. And he knew that the only thing that was going to really make a difference was the level of commitment that could never be denied. And so as he gathered around him for one last pep talk, they thought he was going to say, hey, if the arrows get flying, we're going to meet back here at the coconut stump, and then we're gone. But as they quieted down, he leaned into them and he said 3 words that changed the whole deal. He said, burn the boats. And they said, excuse me? He said, burn the boats. And he torched them. He burned all 11 boats. He said, if we're going home in their boats. Well, an amazing transformation took place. An amazing thing happened. They really fought well. In fact, they took the treasure. It was the first time it had been done in 600 years, but they took the treasure. They took it. Why? They had no choice. Take it or die. So they took it. And I look, even today, after that story having so much of an impact on me years ago, and I think this is a principle that a lot of us lack. We have ideas about the things we want to do. We have visions about the places we want our families to be. And yet, there are still boats in our life, floating, the excuses that are keeping us from getting what we say we want. What are the boats that you have? What are the boats that need burning today? Because burn them, it'll make such a huge difference. You won't even believe